And we're live.
Hello.
Hello. This is our last World Watch video before Worlds. There's obviously going to be a 2-week break because Worlds doesn't start till the 5th of October, maybe more. We're going to be working off of a weekly schedule still. And I will be doing my daily review videos for that time for those who are watching. That's a great way to do an intro, Sam. Good job. Hi, everybody. This is Vision Denial. Over here, we've got Josh, here, Connor, and I'm Sam. We've got quite a day ahead of us as we've got the Worlds patch has finally come out, and the group draws have come out. And boy, oh boy, do I imagine we have some thoughts about that. First thing I want to mention right off the gate, how does everybody feel about the general vibe World is going to have going into it?
I'll go first.
Besides the fact that we had to dance around COVID.
Yeah, I think this World is looking pretty good because it's like we're coming in with it's not like there's one or two teams that are crazy far ahead or anything. Like there's a lot of teams like, yeah, this reasonably has a chance. If you want to make your argument that like whoever has a chance, like pick your team, whatever, like you could probably make it, right? Like no matter what region you're from, you can kind of still say like it doesn't look that bad, right? Like this is we have a chance here. And I think everyone everyone having a chance and everyone coming in looking all around pretty good. It's like it'll be a good World.
Yeah.
I think for once, a lot of the teams that I'm seeing, I'm like, okay, there's a chance. Like
exactly.
The stars align.
Just let me huff a little bit more of that hopey, Just
Exactly my point.
a little bit more.
It's like your group chat name, 2021's Hopes and Dreams.
Exactly.
I think I mentioned it in the last video where like this is the most hype I've been for any Worlds. The last time I felt this kind of hype, I think was in 2016.
That's been a while.
Yeah. I think it's also the last time SKT made it to a finals. Is that right? Is that right? Might have been 2017. It's 2017's the last time they made the finals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is the most competitive memes out of all of the years that we've had. And it's going to be pretty fun. I want to lean in before we make any predictions or look into the groups because the group draws have happened and I have feelings about how they happened. I want to look at support watch as 11.19 is our official Worlds patch, and boy oh boy did they ever double down on Enchanters.
It's technically a lot of things that could be viable supports. Right, like just running over the buffs quickly, like when you're looking at slightly lower cooldowns on their crowd control for Cho'Gath and Galio, are those viable supports? Right,
yes.
Like 6-second rupture on Cho'Gath, like
Amumu, I didn't know this. I played Amumu in an ARAM game yesterday. Amumu has 2 charges of his Q?
Yeah,
What?
that was a patch ago. Yeah.
Oh my god. Like,
and I've seen Amumu support in solo queue.
I know. It's apparently like a really good pick in Korea. Like, what?
Yeah, because most things like most champions, like Thresh, if you miss your hook, you now don't have it. Boo Boo gets 2 shots,
2 tries.
2 tries, not just one.
And
Or I
it's
can
only
stun
like a
you
minute.
twice.
Wow, not a minute. It's only a second between each casting. So like that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's
You
the
hit the first
casting.
one, they flash away. You then hit the second, and like
That's the casting time of a Yasuo dash.
Yep.
Can you please
Now you
imagine?
can be Spider-Man.
Now you can.
yeah, because all of the playoffs and stuff was like 11.16 at the most. They didn't actually
yeah.
play on the 11.17,
No.
I think it was, which was the Amumu buff. So we haven't seen pro play with a Amumu buff.
Mm-hmm. Pro play for playoffs was 11.15 for every region except Korea, and 11.16 was played in the finals of Japan and Russia. And
exactly. And like, I talked about at the end of the last video, 20 seconds off of the Seraphine ult. 20 seconds. That is huge. Granted, normally with cooldown reduction, that'll be like, a 12 or 14 second difference. But that's like Seraphine ult is amazing. Its only problem is the fact that it was on such a long cooldown.
Can we talk about the patch notes? How infuriating it was to read. Seraphine has been a little weak recently, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Seraphine has still seen regular pro play on a successful-ish level. You're telling me she's weak?
But
for normal play, for normies.
Yeah, except the entire patch, they said in the top of the patch notes, all of our changes was directed to Worlds patch. So we're going to be making a focus on that primarily. And I'm like, you're saying Seraphine was weak in pro play?
It's just,
I mean, she wasn't played in NA yet, meaning she needs more buffs.
Oh,
like it's been discussed though, like pro play, they don't tend to full and commit like every 20 seconds like you do in solo queue and stuff.
Yeah.
So Seraphine's not necessarily as good at lower elos when it's like, okay, if we're not fighting as often, if we're fighting way more often, and my ult is not going to be up for a lot of these fights because we're fighting so often, which means I'm in a much worse position. Whereas if I'm in pro play where they're actually going to, my team is actually going to wait until my ult cooldown is back in order to fight.
Mm-hmm. And
so,
correct me if I'm wrong, Seraphine, like she is getting picked obviously, but she's not getting picked like that often, right? Like she's not like priority or anything.
So like she had some priority, but the priorities were not in the legacy regions. Save for some PCS.
I think that might have been the reason why they buffed it though, because the good old classic pros don't play anything unless it's broken thing. So that's why at least some of the less talented legacy regions NA get like dumpstered by crap because they're like, well, if it's not OP and not all the top Korean teams are playing, we won't even look at it. So
yeah,
that might be why they buffed it.
Yeah. Part of me thinks that it's weird because of the type of buff they did. They did such a heavy lean into it. Granted, they did this type of heavy lean to a lot of supports. It was really baffling to see. They also they did a bunch of stuff like, oh, we really wanted to index on some things for Kiana, and I'm like, you guys index so heavily for Kiana in the last patch. Are you really telling us you want assassin jungles and enchanters this patch? You could not be more predictable, Riot. This is your most predictable Worlds patch.
Right? Like, they're saying, okay, we're seeing the bruiser junglers, and we know they're still viable. And we didn't necessarily... They did nerf Diego the patch before and that kind of thing, but most of them are still viable.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're gonna introduce the classes that are kind of lacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they made... It's pretty funny still in solo queue. You always have that one person who's always like, "Why is someone playing Zed in the jungle? It's so bad. It's so bad. Who's doing this? What is it?" It's like, no. You don't read the patch notes, do you?
Yes. You're gonna be 3 weeks late by the time we're 2 patches gone.
Exactly.
So I want to ask, how are you guys feeling in regards to the idea of this increased lean in enchanters and assassins going into the Worlds patch? And do you think this heavy lean, this very obvious read by them, will actually have as big an impact onto the tournament? Or do you think it won't it's not enough to outclass what has been the trend so far.
I think as a player, I hate playing against assassins. I think it's stupid. But because I'm bad, but pros are less bad. And seeing pros play around assassins and with assassins, if they're not LeBlanc, is fun to me. I don't. Well, I think LeBlanc's lame because like she's the one that's always there, right? So it's like I've seen LeBlanc a million times. Whereas like I can't literally. I think the last time I saw a pro Talon was when Samsung won their first Worlds. Like
The famous XPEC Z Talon duel year.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like I haven't seen like a Talon and we haven't seen Zed in forever. Like so like I'm
Yeah.
I'm okay with them buffing assassins because like we rarely get to see assassins played at the pro level, so I'd be really interested to see how that works out.
Ari's not an assassin. She's an Everfrost. Let's double CC someone with a charm.
True. And when it comes to enchanters, I'm
Sorry.
okay with it. I'm a little bit worried that how do I say this? I'm a little bit worried that like it might cause games to be slow.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people play enchanters like really laid back to the point where like laning phase like they get laning phase like last like 10 minutes or whatever, or sorry, not 10 minutes, but they'll get laning phase to last like 15 to 20 minutes into the game or whatever, and it's just like, oh, this is long. So I hope that doesn't get to that point, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with those changes and I'm interested to see what it does.
But that's only if both teams are trying to do the same thing. That's if like, okay, I'm playing Kog'Maw Lulu, you're playing Soraka Twitch, and we're gonna sit here, right? Like, I don't expect that, right? Like if sure, maybe we'll see these things, but I think it's really interesting because now we're like, we don't necessarily know what the strongest thing is. I don't think all the teams are going to have the same read on the meta, right? So we might have a couple teams who say, yeah, Seraphine was already good. Let's make Seraphine comps. If she's good, maybe Misfortune's not in the best place, but if Seraphine's so good, then maybe we should play the Misfortune just because it's really good with the Seraphine.
Mm-hmm.
And that, right? That kind of thing. And let's do it. And other teams might say, you know what? If they're going to pick an enchanter, if they're going to play Sona, who is really strong and high elo with her rework, if you're going to play Sona, maybe pre-6, because these are enchanters that have kill threat at 6, which is important, right? Because it means normally if I'm playing, the Janna and Soraka and stuff, it's like I don't really have kill threat, so the other team can do what they want into it. At least with these ones, it's like, okay, I can't. Once they hit 6, they have really huge kill threat. Pre-6, it enables the other team to do stuff, right? So it's like, okay, I can play an Alistar or a Thresh or a Pike or whatever, and I can go impact the mid lane, like we saw with Core JJ Shen and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I can get stuff done pre-6 before they really have the kill threat, that's going to be a kind of interesting read on that to see.
This my thoughts on this is like two-pronged. The first one is shorter. Is I think that there are going to be teams that are going to take the obvious bait, because I don't think that the changes to the enchanters are enough to do much other than maybe increase the rate at which solo lane enchanters come up. So there might be an increase in that. But I do think there's still going to be an increase in assassin junglers, and I think that's going to pivot to more engaged top laners than anything else. So it's going to be like if we're going to play enchanters, we play it in the top lane, and then our jungle is regular or standard as opposed for the last like 4 months. And vice versa, we're going to play an assassin jungler, then we're going to play more engaged standard type top laner. That's where I think that the initial meta read will be. I think that's what it's going to start off as. And as things go on, it'll like maybe get a little wilder. My second thought is there's like this prevailing, I don't want to call it a conspiracy theory because like it's not that nefarious, but like professional play is intended to be like an advertisement for Riot to get people to play the game, and the more that professional play mirrors solo queue games, the better. And so I think that they've made a bunch of these changes to these enchanters again, this is a little conspiratorial, but like we have evidence because of the lane swap meta. For those who have never played beforehand, the lane swap meta I thought was fantastic. It actually had very quick games. People don't remember that. It's just because the first 10 minutes or so is just like base racing. But it had very interesting approaches to it. It had much better macro awareness and much more like it was more interesting conceptually speaking. A lot of people did not like watching it. Nor did Riot enjoy the fact that people were playing less because of it. So they forcibly changed the way towers and minions work for like 16 patches in a row to make it so that it's stuck that way to match
People forget about that. Yeah, because like bot lane towers are weaker than the other towers, and people tend to forget that. So they're like,
yeah.
I personally think that was an okay change to make because like it's one of those things where it's like only people who are giga plugged in can appreciate it, and everyone else is just like, why?
Yeah.
And like, while it might be the more like macro, like, oh my god, these small decisions that make the world a difference, blah blah blah. Like, while that might very well be a thing,
okay,
it's not the best thing for viewership, and I can understand if they
Yeah.
changed it literally just to make
Of
viewership
course.
better.
kind of a side note, but I remember like solo queue season 5, I would get into champ select and be like, guys, let's do a lane swap, playing support. Get my top laner to agree with it, and the other team would just get so mad because we'd do pulling the full lane swap in solo queue all the time.
It's so good. So I think
Anyway.
that I think because of it, I think the roaming support causing less actions to happen in the bot lane because a lot of hyper action and major calls in the first couple of minutes happen primarily from 4 people bottom lane dives, which don't happen as much anymore. And so I think that they primarily changed it so that more of them happen. And if enchanters are the primary focus because they're so good and they have a higher priority, better than engage or roaming supports, we're likely to see more of those happen. But I don't think it was enough of a change for that to actually happen. But conspiracy hat aside,
I mean, I'm just expecting like I still think the same type of supports are happening. I'm predicting there will be a Cho'Gath support played at some point, especially into like
Unicorns.
into a virus. Like you ban Thresh, pick it into a virus or a Felios that doesn't have a dash to get away from your rupture. Like, let's do it. But anyway, I'm still expecting the same type of like engage supports if we have the assassin meta in the jungle, because what it enables is I can put a bunch of deep wards down and then go help my jungler pulling off jungle invades. And it's if we can get our assassin in the jungle ahead, right? So it's like, okay, I have a Talon jungle and I'm playing the Thresh. I'm going to sneak a ward in, get into the enemy jungle, and I'm going to land a hook, because what that enables is my assassin jungler can now one-shot that person while they're hooked, right? And it's going to create a lead through the jungle, and now we can basically win the game off of these controlling the enemy jungles, getting the deep wards down, preventing their jungle from even getting to his own buffs. Like,
I think
if you pull that off,
I think
like that's basically a win condition.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail like on the coffin here regarding it, because like they didn't do any changes to almost anything top lane. Did you guys notice that? There's virtually
Scion
nothing.
buffs.
But I think the
Like,
only reason
yeah.
why we would see any more enchanter supports is if there was any changes to the solo lanes. And the only major change that I saw to the solo lanes was Ryze, which I'll segue into that. So, like, I agree 100% that we might not see any decreases, or not any major significant decreases in engage or roaming supports, because there's no changes to any of the other lanes. If the priority for the solo lanes is virtually unchanged, or you just add more options because the enchanters are so good now that you can just viably put them into a different lane and still keep almost everything else intact-ish.
Well, they didn't really change or buff Lulu or Karma, which are the usual ones we see in the solo lanes.
Yeah, but they buffed more options. That's the thing that, like, because
like we're not going to see Sona top or something.
No,
really.
But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Sona mid. I mean, if we're going to see Seraphine again, Seraphine we're likely to see mid lane. And we know that for a fact.
Yeah, but Seraphine is really good wave clear. is why she gets away with it.
Sure, but how many mid laners have no good wave clear to begin with, and they're still used mid lane?
A few.
Who?
There's a few. Yasuo's got no good wave clear, still used in the mid lane.
Well, until he has like a bunch of items and auto crits everything, but like again, that's like
Not really in professional play though.
No, in professional play he
Not
was
a
fairly
ton.
frequently. Yone's the same kind of deal. A lot of the things that we expected from assassin-like characters, and I think it's the biggest difference. There's also a lot of control mages had their wave clear. Their wave clear is great when they have items. Their early game wave clear is not so great because that's not the point of early game control mages.
They're bad
right?
early. Yeah.
So it would not surprise me if at some point we see any enchanters in the solo lanes, not like as the standard, but on an occasional basis, because their buffs themselves lend some actual utility, especially if assassins are going to be the thing. I'm more convinced of that than more enchanter supports than anything else.
Okay, I'm just like, why would I ever want a Sona mid when Orianna is an option who can do more damage, clear waves better, still has the same CC on her ultimate,
Didn't
enables your
Orianna
team.
have like a 50% ban rate?
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, that's fair. If there's a bunch of bans towards mid.
Also, never underestimate, like, casters will repeat this sometimes, but like, never underestimate the fact that like if you play against something that hasn't been meta for a while, you need to readjust to playing against it. So like that's always also valuable.
Yeah. The second thing, the next thing I want to segue into is the number of Ryze nerfs. There were a hefty set of nerfs done to him that I think will do nothing to remove him. Do you guys agree?
Honestly, I just don't understand how Ryze works. He just seems to always be in pro play, or he isn't, and like I don't know why.
He's always there, or he isn't.
Like he's there until he isn't.
What a statement.
What a Scar quote to have there.
Okay, 5% AP off his Q. It's a tiny bit less damage, and a 0.25 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think it'll do much. They did nothing to the thing that really made him good in pro play.
It was sneaking barons and stuff.
His ultimate. They were like, we're gonna touch his laning phase, and so his laning phase is gonna be worse, and so they won't actually play him because he'll have a harder time being impactful across the map. And I want you guys to really think back at every playoff game that Ryze was in. Do you think his laning phase, being good, did anything to change his impact in the rest of the game? No. So I think they really fucked up. They should have straight up nerfed his
early
ultimate.
game because they did 0.25 seconds on his E in the early game. Doesn't make a huge difference. Like, yeah, it feels a bit longer because it's a short cooldown, but you're not really going to notice the 0.25 second difference. Not really. Not very much. And then 5% AP off of his Q, which, sure, late game he does 50 less damage. But in the early game, when you only have 50 AP, you do like 2 less damage. Ooh.
I could not believe that they were like, Ryze has been too impactful recently. We're trying to scale.
He does 2 less damage, guys. 2.
I'm like, Riot, not only are you predictable, but I don't think your patch did what I think you wanted to do as much as you wanted it, other than assassins are now going to be way more present.
But I don't think they wanted Ryze like non-existent though necessarily. Like Ryze is still, I think he's still good for the meta because he's still like, hey, we can play longer range things into Ryze and punish him.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to see someone just go like, okay, I'm gonna pick Xerath into Ryze and I'm gonna blow you up. You could do it. You can totally do it because you have enough damage in the early game to actually kill him. No one does it.
There's only 2 regions that played Xerath during the entire playoff. And that was Turkey and Russia. And neither one of them were very good. So
yeah, he can deal with assassins.
Did a bot lane.
He can deal with assassins because he can go like phase rush, root you and run away kind of thing. his main thing is he can't do anything to someone who has like more than 550-ish range. Like, pick Caitlyn mid into Ryze and just kill him. Right? Like,
Well, then you're asking pros to pick Caitlyn mid, and that's not gonna
no,
happen.
but like, you can do it. It creates some interesting options. Like, somebody might have a good counter pick for Ryze, right? Like, it's not. You don't see it. I'd like to see it. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, no,
Pick something.
I'm down for crazy shit. It's just that like pro players are the slowest to adapt to anything, so
Yeah, and the ones
especially
that
NA pro players. So
the ones that are like the fastest to adapt to things don't do it very well either.
Okay,
right?
we saw Zoe buffs. Why don't we see more Zoe into Ryze? Like, it is done in pro play.
I think the only region
It
that
is
actually
you.
does Zoe into Ryze is the LPL right now. I think China's the only region that does it. I'd have to double check that. Editor me will not actually put an answer on the screen. Don't ask me to. Editor me will love it.
But it works though, because you could just
Yes.
harass the Ryze.
I mean, like, they did Zoe buffs, which means we'll see more Ezreal. Yeah. No, they're a hand-in-hand pair. If one's really good, the other one usually is enabled
Like, on the same team or against each other?
on the same team.
Oh, wait.
They're usually,
Okay.
if you're red side and you have the option to play Zoe and Ezreal, and Zoe's a priority or Ezreal's a priority, you usually pick one and the other.
Not Zoe Varus for the double damage.
they've
arrows?
been nerfing Varus recently, so I don't know if they'd pick him.
Okay.
It's not as likely because Varus's abilities don't cycle as quickly, and Zoe's and Ezreal's cycle in a very similar fashion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that you can't use Varus with Zoe. You probably could. It just doesn't cycle as this at the same rate. I have one last question regarding meta for all of you.
Okay.
Who, and I'm going to remove the unicorn in the room, okay, because by default, this was automatically going to be a yes from them. Which other team, other than the unicorns, because it's expected by them at this point, which other team do you think is going to bring out the crazy pick?
T1.
Okay. Interesting.
I think Demon God Faker mode will re-engage, and we're gonna get like an Olaf mid again, like the good old days.
Okay. All right. I'll let Connor think on it. I think, personally, that it's 100 Thieves that's going to do it.
Also, a good idea.
Reapered is a has like giga brain. Like, immediately is just going to be like, ah, yes, this team likes to do this one thing. I know the perfect obscure counter to it. And we'll just do that on repeat. At least in the group stages.
Yeah, I mean, depends what you consider crazy. Like, you know, I will probably see the Hui set support. Is that weird though?
No. I'm talking about like
That's not weird.
I'm talking about like which team do you think will pick something that's out of nowhere? Like if we all see like, oh, on the first day some team picks a Moo support, none of us are gonna think that's crazy, right? But
I mean, most of the world would think that's pretty crazy.
yeah, but like, come on, if the rest of the world does not see this from 100 miles away, after 2 patch worths of stuff happening that would suggest it. Anywho, not gonna try to like make an insult out of things that are happening, but like if a team picks Soraka top, even if I said that's a thing that might happen, we'll all think that's crazy still. Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Or things like I saw a crazy combo of Zillion Yumi bot lane.
Oh boy.
I like it. I like where this is going.
You like
I'm
where this?
digging
Yeah,
this.
exactly. So things that like, not like things that are fringe, like set support, or things that like are like semi flexible across the board. Like out of nowhere, like top lane Rammus, which was murmured in like Russia for quite a bit.
What about like Mako's Maokai support?
Ooh. Ooh. I'd be okay with that. I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
He's done it, but um,
But yeah, it's
I want these
something.
Janna.
Your money is on Janna. You don't have a team that you
I said
think is
I
gonna.
want these Janna.
Oh, I want
That's what I said.
these. Mm.
Like we've seen it. Hillsong's Pike. Like
Well, Pike
these
is
are
literally
things we expected, right? Like
yeah.
used to it, right? Like if Adam plays Darius, it's like, yeah, he was a Darius one trick.
Yeah,
For
but
anyone else, it'd be weird.
I'm thinking
For him, it's fine.
I'm thinking about things that are like out of nowhere. Like even if it's
Yeah.
a team that has like a weird pick on the side, they don't do that. They do something completely different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things you'd be like, whoa, even in solo queue.
Yeah.
Like if you saw Darius top in solo queue, it'd be like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with like the Pike support and stuff. Okay. Just Maokai support.
Do you have a team in mind, or you're not certain on that one?
I'm gonna go actually with I think LNG just because
Okay.
I think in the play-ins, and I expect it to be in play-ins, because in a game versus like Peace or something where they're like, we could probably win this game with 3 players.
That is rude.
Oh my god.
That is rude.
What a quotable moment.
So they might take a player or two and be like, let's just try something. See how it goes.
They literally saw RNG dumpster the LCO and go like, ah yes, how far can we take it? That's a t-shirt moment. They could probably
There you
beat
go.
Peace with 3 players. Well, with that devastating segue, let's go into play-in prediction, shall we?
I set it up.
Just eat dunk. I just throw. We all did a bunch of predictions.
Yes.
So with that, I will say let's start with play-ins and then go into groups. So for the two of you, I think the two of you mentioned you both wanted to see Home on Life and LNG in the same group, and I didn't. You guys got what you wanted. You guys got the big stompers in the same group.
Now they can stop
Yeah,
each other.
I'm not. If I can go first, I'm not as huge on these groups just because we're looking at it. Kind of no matter how you arrange the teams, it's probably the HLE LNG your number 1, number 2, and then what's again probably in subject to interpretation, but probably the teams that are number 8, 9, 10 out of the 10 teams, and then the group B is teams 3 through 7. Right? So it makes Group B really interesting. My main problem with it is that it almost guarantees that we actually get 2 teams out of each group. And it's really unlikely that the number 3, number 4 seed from either of the groups that gets to cross over and play the other team's number 2 will have any chance in that matchup. Because it'll be one of where is it? In Peace or Red going up against like, Cloud9 or DFM kind of thing, and probably not winning that, and it'll be one of like, a Beyond Gaming or Cloud9, same thing, playing up against like HLE, right? So we're almost guaranteed the 2 teams out of each group. Then really the only question that leaves is who are your top 2 in Group B?
Oh shit. Okay, yeah, that's a super solid breakdown of how these 2 groups were laid out. That's great. So how about we segment this then? I don't think Red should be automatically counted out in any way, shape, or form. right? Because how does it's the top, like the first place out of both groups qualifies automatically, right?
Yep, exactly.
I think there's literally zero chance in the world that we see Peace or Infinity go through. I think the three of us are like in a similar agreement with that.
You
Okay.
definitely don't want to see Peace there.
You're saying like top 2? No.
No. I don't see them even getting out in terms of like top 3, right? Because it's the top 3 go to the next part, but top 1 moves to the group
3
stage.
plays 4. They do one more game, I think.
Oh,
3 plays 4.
4. Oh,
Play one more game, and then the winner of that plays 2 from the other group.
right.
So like it'll be like Red versus Infinity or something. But if you're assuming that Red probably beats whoever of Infinity and Peace they have to play against again, then sure.
I'm really curious. Josh, you have the most confidence out of the three of us in Peace.
Yep.
What's got you so confident in our LCO representatives?
It's less confidence in them, and
2-2. Okay. 2-2. That's a
so
prediction.
I liked the Australian region. You know, I liked my Aussie boys,
Yeah. Okay.
and this is basically just like remnants of that love. Just like I want to see him do something good, you know. So I give him the 2-2.
Okay.
It's basically where it is.
That's where it is. You know what? 100%. We're all in agreement that we don't think Infinity is going to do great.
Mhm.
Which is a fair assessment. I don't think anybody thinks Infinity is going to do great, despite the fact that this is probably the most solid team Latin America's had in the last 6 years, which is really unfortunate. They've had a great run. Josh, I imagine you put Red Canids Kalunga, dear Lord, their name, at dead last place because
That's surprising.
dead last no games won, as opposed to me, who has the utmost faith that they are the stronger of the bottom 3 of these teams.
I'm just saying, I feel like I forget. Does Reds doesn't have BRTT? Does he?
No, BRTT did not qualify.
Yeah, okay.
They're mostly
No.
rookies.
I personally think that like a little bit over rated, I will completely admit, but I think BRTT is still very good, and I think that whenever they don't send a team that has BRTT on them, I'm kind of just like, I don't have much faith, because I feel like because he's somewhat kind of respected for his skill by other regions, like it changes the way they interact with them. I like kind of like what I'm imagining. I know there's no like tentative like
No, you're
truth.
100% on the mark there. Yeah.
So I feel like because there's no BRTT,
Yeah, it's kind of
no
a personality
reason to
thing.
auto respect them, you know?
I will say that Red is very much like Connor said, a bunch of up and comers more than anything else.
Means we don't know.
Right, and so it's a lot of unknowns. I don't think any of them have international experience. Like not a single one. What really gives me a lot of confidence is that they're the most flexible team that I've seen come out of the Brazilian region since I'll say since Brazil's I'll say since at least 2015.
That's interesting. Okay.
Right? Because Brazil is a very much a fighty region. Like, no matter what kind of composition, even if they have like the best read on the meta, they never apply it consistently. And this year was very different. There was like this slow progression to actual change that like it even caught up against Pain Gaming, which is the team that BRTT is in.
There you go, Pain. That's what he's on. Yes.
Yeah. And so during the during this particular tournament, I didn't think Red was going to do well at all during the playoffs, and they've more than surprised me to the point where if they were to be the game, like, let's say C9 makes second place, right?
Okay.
If Red was to face C9 in a best of 5, I could see Red ink out a win. Now, there is still warranted concern about their lack of international experience. Most new teams from an emerging region, if a team has 0 international experience from an emerging region, it doesn't do so hot usually. They tend to cave under pressure. So it's totally understandable to expect them to kind of flop and not pull through. In the same vein that even like a legacy region that sends a new team, like a first place team, first seeded team that has 0 international experience, and that team flops, in the same vein. No one has confidence in Infinity. There's mixed confidence in Peace, except for me, who has 0 confidence. But I don't have much confidence in the LCO usually. Sometimes they surprise me. Usually they surprise me. I should learn from them now, but they never make it very far. But we're all in agreement that LNG is almost guaranteed to auto-qualify.
Yeah, I'm going to be very surprised if LNG doesn't win. Like the group.
Yeah. So, like, it's all a matter of if they are... Like, my big question mark is whether or not they will beat Homolife. I'm confident they will, but it's like the how. How do they beat them? Oh, yeah.
Can I make one totally unrelated note just because I noticed something when I was looking through statistics?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Andre on EDG actually plays Sejuani top, and Sejuani got buffed. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Leaving it at that.
Okay.
Sorry. I got excited for a split second when I saw Sejuani top.
Okay.
No, that's true. I've heard a couple people talk about that actually. So who knows? That might actually for somehow be a thing.
I got excited. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. So, given that, because we all predict that Homolife is going to be second place, do you think that this is a fight for Group B? Whoever gets first place saves themselves from the tournament, and everybody else is doomed.
Well, first and second, right? Like,
so
that's what I was saying at the beginning.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Is the third and fourth place teams probably on each side are pretty doomed?
Yes. So, I think we all reflected that this is the closest group out of all of them. The only team that we are all in unanimous agreement that is likely not going to make it is Galatasaray.
Yep.
Which is almost disappointing, just because.
Yeah.
Turkey always does better than expected, kind of thing, right? Like it's.
Well, recently not so much. Recently, everybody has over-expected Turkey to perform, and then they don't.
It's true.
Right?
Okay.
I think it's going to be the same case this year. I think Turkey should be expected. This is the expectation that people should have for Galatasaray. Their playoff the entire time has been a mixed bag of questions. It's very, very weird looking at the Turkish playoffs and go, this was the team that Fenerbahce was from? Where is any strategy? There's none. There's no strategy. There is draft for lanes, win game. And there's only so far that goes, especially given how macro-oriented a lot of these other teams are. UL is a big exception.
Also, just like some of these teams are just better pound for pound as well. Like,
yes, 100% agree.
Like probably Cloud9.
Like probably, yes. As much as I will clown on Cloud9, Galatasaray has no chance.
Hey man, they got the $2 million ticket out of play-ins.
So the question is, because we all think that they're not going to do great, who's the one team we think they're going to beat?
Oh.
That no one thought
I
about
think
that, did they?
I think they'll get a game off UOL.
You will.
That's who
agree.
I think they'll get a game off of.
I
'Cause,
agree.
Yeah, if No Man's is in the mid lane again, gonna disrespect someone, cost the game. It's gonna happen.
I was just thinking, like, they're likely to pull off a win against someone. Like, someone's gonna have a bad, like, whatever. Cloud9's gonna have a bad game or something. And like, I just didn't think it would be like as straight as like, okay, this team's clearly better than this team. It'll be like it's best of ones.
Mhm.
Teams are gonna win or lose best of ones, especially when the group is not as easy to predict.
True. I mean, there is an element of randomness that comes with best of ones, but a consistent factor that comes with best of ones, especially ones that lead into best of fives, is that you would have to be so consistently worse than every other team to lose every single best of one. Right? And so like if no team is at it 100% of the time, the only team that has the most dominant record of all time in Worlds is literally SKT 2015. And no team has ever had that kind of like dominant go. Like it's the old adage of like no team has ever gone perfect run in a group stage, right? Like you don't. It's not
In
a
group
thing.
stage, people have gone 6-0.
SKT 2015. It's the last time. It's either 2015
That's the last time someone's gone 6-0.
Yeah, either the 2015 or 2016 one. Yeah, there hasn't been other than that. It is a talking point every world. It's like, which team's going to get the 6-0? Because none of the teams have gotten it.
And TSM was the first ever 0-6.
Was the first ever the team has lost every game, yes. but not ever. It's been a while
But
since the team
it was made worse by the fact that they were a first seed.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is why I don't care that they're not going to. Sorry, not the tangent. This is why I don't care that they're not going to Worlds. You could come back in like 2 years, man. No one, you can't mess up that bad and then just be like, oh, we're fine,
Well,
guys.
it's
No,
4/5 a new team, so that's
still the same back end. The
yeah.
back end is still the same.
Pretty much.
okay. 1907 Fibonacci that went 0-6 in 2017.
In play-ins? We're talking about groups.
In groups. They were in a group with Samsung, RNG, and G2. Ooh.
Oh, that went 06. Yeah.
Yeah, they went 06.
I'm talking about
someone was like TSM was the first team, and I'm like,
Oh shit, you're right.
That was such a group of death. Their group was RNG, G2, and Samsung Galaxy. Ugh.
Yeah, no, that was bad.
No one blames them. Maybe the first like non-emerging region team to go 0-6 or something.
That sounds right.
That probably is what it made me mean. Okay.
The thing I want to also put a note on before we keep tangenting over history.
Sorry.
Is we all have a similar idea of how we expect things between BYG C9 and DFM. Right? So I think we're all under the same agreement that those are the top 3. Then my next question is because we're expecting one of these teams to be the third place team that has to face off against the second place team with Group A, which we expect to be Humble Life. If you were to put a bet on which team you think has the best chance of beating Humble Life in the best of 5, who would you rather have?
Most likely to win a best of 5 versus HLE.
Yeah.
It has to be a Group B team, right? That's how it works.
The one of the either BYG, C9, or DFM, because those are the 3 teams that consistently across the board we're all in agreement are like the contenders of that group.
I think C9 could maybe pull it, maybe.
Okay.
All depends though.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to go with Cloud9 just because they're the one team where you can say, like, okay, Alphari manages to go 5-0 one game on like a,
Alphari.
I'm totally on the wrong team. Sorry. My apologies.
Okay.
Like perks are. Am I thinking?
Fudge
I
is
might
their
have
top
totally
lane.
mixed up.
Fudge is their top laner.
Fudge,
Why
Blabber,
am I thinking
Perks,
about Team Liquid?
and Vulcan.
Alfari's
I totally was thinking entirely about Team Liquid. I was like, yeah, Core JJ, they got Alfari, and I'm just like, yeah, Team Liquid.
no.
Yeah,
So
man.
do you want
Team
to think your answer again? Which out of DFM, C9, and BYG do you think have a better chance at beating Humble Life in a best of 5?
Liquid.
Team Liquid.
Still Team
What's wrong
Liquid.
with me?
How about you, Josh? Who do you think?
I think it's C9. I feel like
Okay.
if Perks can bring his $2 million paycheck A game, it should be not a shoe-in, but it should be like a pretty decent like lock, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or sorry,
Fudge,
I guess
Fudge.
I shouldn't say a lock, but like it's not gonna be like a 3-0, but like I think they'd win. Like
Okay. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have my one other thing on that answer is that yeah, like there is maybe a world where Parks can at least like not beat Chovy, but like prevent Chovy from running away with the game at the very least. Like, not be worse than like 0-2.
Yeah.
And then yeah, if Chovy's not carrying, there is a thing where they're the old TSM of Korea almost, where sometimes it is Chovy in 4 wards.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm gonna say BYG.
okay.
I think that Beyond is probably the better suited team to beat Humble Life in a best of 5. Primarily because it's also the best team at recognizing a pattern from a winning team. Teams that are consistent with wins and are very highly that have like a consistent go at things, have usually an easier time being read. And BYG, despite all of their other faults, are really good at reading a strong team, as they are still the only team to have beaten PSG in the region.
Yep.
That is the only reason why they're the second place team, is because they're the only team to be good at reading how other teams play. Now, how consistent that is not that great. In summer they were they were 5-7 against PSG. Now that's a great record in comparison to an undefeated team for most of the season out of PSG, but it's still the only team to manage to get wins off of them, and they did it because they were able to properly adapt and predict against the team. I think they are a really strong best of 5 team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
let's move on to groups. Now we've got a couple
where lots of teams have gone 0-6. What was that article I found? TSM, first team to go 0-6. No.
Anywho,
anyways,
let's move on to groups before we talk about group faults. So I know that I mentioned in our last video that I think that there are going to be 0 groups of death, right? But I'm going to play that game anyways. Out of the 4 groups that were drawn, and mind you, this is where we expect Humble Life and LNG to automatically slot. And if that's the case, Humble Life would slot into Group C with Fnatic, RNG, and PSG, and LNG would slot in Group D with Mad Lions, Gen G, and Team Liquid.
yeah, LNG has to go.
So keep that in mind. Group C and Group D will have what we expect are top 2 go-getters.
Meaning Cloud9 would have to be A.
And if Cloud9 passes, and BYG would have to be in Group B. That's if the top 4 will go.
Yep.
Which of the groups do you say is the group of death? I don't think there's a single group of life, but which one is the group of death?
Hmm.
I think almost the only valid answer is A. Just because how that's usually judged is does every team have a chance at a group of life, right? That's the general. It's like, hey, all 4 teams have a chance of making it out. And we kind of have that in BCD. It's not guaranteed. Like, we can talk about how, like, 100 Thieves is very unlikely to get out of Group B, but there's still a world where it happens, right? Like, so it's not necessarily a group of death, like, unless you have very low expectations of 100 Thieves and, likely Beyond Gaming. If you're saying 100 Thieves and Beyond Gaming are really bad, which could be an argument, not mine, but it could
Yeah.
be someone's, then you could say Group B is the group of death, right? Most people are going to go with Group A, though, just because if you're having Damwon and FPX as, like, teams likely to make finals type of thing, like potential favorites going into the tournament, then, and especially if we're thinking, both of us had Rogue and Cloud9, if they're the team that gets slotted in, rated pretty low. So if we have 2 extremely high rated teams versus 2 extremely low rated teams.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I was going to go on a rant about how Group D looks absolutely monstrous for anybody going against Gen G and Mad Lions, even if I could make the rant about Gen G not being like super confident in. That's still you're but yeah, you're right. It makes an interesting
But you're expecting LNG to go into that group, though, right? Could they pull off an upset against Gen G?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Right? So is that really a group of death for them?
Okay,
No.
you make a solid argument. I cannot disagree with that. It feels very hard to see Group A be anything other than Damwon and FPX make it through.
Mm-hmm.
Which group do you think will be the most fun to watch?
Personally, for me, I think it's going to be Group B.
Yeah.
Or Group D. Because Group B for me almost purely off of just T1. Because we haven't seen T1 at Worlds in forever, so I think that's going to be just like a really fun group to watch in general because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Group D, because while I think Gen G has maybe a leg up, in general when it comes to like who's better, I do think that Mad and Liquid and most likely whoever else gets put in there all have regularly like equal chances of making it, which will make every game worth it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Likely LNG, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm really excited about the way that Group C is gonna play out. Because it's the famous Fnatic versus RNG group stage debacle
Yes.
for
We got that again.
the 4th time in a row where both of these teams are slotted in Worlds. They get slotted in groups. Like, it's cursed.
We got some great storylines. Like, we got the RNG Fnatic again. Didn't you want to see Reaper versus T1?
Oh yeah, 100%. I kind
So
of
you
also
got
want to see
that?
them against DK, but yes.
But like, he coached or was on SKT in like 2013
No, Reaper. So
or something, right?
DK has Coma currently. DK has Coma, which is the reason why T1 has Faker's 9 titles. And Reaper is the only coach with a positive win rate against Coma. And Reaper is the reason why EDG beat SKT and MSI 2015, and lo and behold, Reaper, EDG, and T1 are all in the same group. Fate, I swear to God, fate is on our side in almost all of these groups.
No, I'm saying, wasn't Reaper the coach of SKT in like season 2?
No, I don't believe that's the case.
I thought he was.
No.
Wasn't Reaper famous for coaching a team in Korea though?
No, he was famous for coaching EDG. His first debacle in coaching was EDG. So if I was to go to
Okay, he was on SKT, but he might have been like a scout or an analyst or something for them then.
He
wasn't like
was a player on SKT.
oh, he was playing at that time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reaper's background, he was briefly, the last role he had was a mid laner on Jin Falcons. He was a top laner between 2012 and 2013 for SK Telecom T11 before it was the T1K, T1S.
Okay. So there is a history there, but just people don't. It's a long time.
It's so long ago. His actual forerun, his first go at coaching was EDG in the year that they beat SKT.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still something.
Oh, yeah.
Plus you got the DM1 and FPX have each other's top laners from last year, right?
Yes.
They traded
do.
top laners, so it's like
so
Nuggery
it's
and
literally
Conor
the rosters of 2020 and 2019's world champions
with swap top
laners.
laners. Which is great.
So if they both make it out of groups, they literally both have a chance to make it to the finals, and all of them will be in contention for a second world championship. Just not necessarily for the same team, but literally the last 2 years world champions in the finals, which will be interesting.
And like we haven't had as much conversation about top lane. But like that really almost is the contest of like if one of them swaps teams and then wins with that team.
Oh yeah, who got the better trade? Let's go.
Yeah. who like that's almost like, is that the contest for like best top laner in the world?
Oh. Who would be the contender for that? I don't think any other team really has like a player that could contest for being best top laner in the world. Granted, I don't think top lane has been much of a conversation because it's not a carry role currently. It's hard to make that metric.
I mean, we've seen like we've definitely seen some Kennons and some bases and some Renekton's and stuff pretty much carry.
True, but if we're going to talk about all of those champions, who's famous for carrying on all of those champions? None other than Nuggery.
Yeah, Nuggery.
Yeah.
He's also famous for being greedy with gold items.
He's actually not this year. This year he's actually been.
No, I mean like from that famous run when people were like, "Oh my god, he has a coin."
Oh god.
I just remember that so vividly. Oh my god.
I think a funny part, because Fnatic and RNG are in Group C again, in the same group. Literally, I think also in Group C again. They were in Group C last time. One of the two could not make it out of groups, and it's always one or the other. It's never both. No, there's 1 year where it was both, but like it's one or the other. And I think that's going to be the case again, because if our expectations are the same, Humble Life makes it in Group C. And PSG is no laughing joke. This is like one of them is likely going to go.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Zhao Hu plays top lane now, for what it's worth. He did role swap, so
Right.
he's really good. The role swap makes it questionable for some people.
Shahu and RNG, I forgot about him. How did I forget him? How did I forget the guy that literally styled on everyone in MSI? Anywho.
Yeah.
There is also, we've seen, regardless of how play-ins works out, the default is that either C9 goes in Group A or Group C. Likely Group A, unless some miracle happens and Humble Life does not make it.
Yeah.
Given that information, do any of you have any confidence at all that a North American team will make it out of groups?
Am I confident? No.
If 100 Thieves was in Group D, I think they'd make it out.
That's spicy. That's spicy. Okay.
You know what? That's a great take. I will 100% hop on board on that take. 100%. Beautiful.
Who do they beat? Do they beat Gen G or do they beat Mad? Or do they beat 8? Like
Yeah.
the thing is,
They beat
group
Mad, and I think they could beat Genji.
group D, I'm having a hard time with predictions. It's like just because like I did talk in a previous video about how like Gen G and LNG were literally the two teams that I was like, yeah, these are teams that are better than a lot of people. Like I had them higher than a lot of people did, saying like, yeah, these teams are actually pretty good. And we agree that Mad is looking pretty good coming into this tournament. But I also don't want to immediately count out TL. I don't think they're going to make it out of the group. I really don't expect it, but I don't want to immediately count them out.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
And like Group B is where I, if I had to be like, okay, which one of the teams is most likely? I'm going with the 100 Thieves. A lot of people would go with TL. I just could they beat one of the three teams and like pull off a third place? Sure. I just don't see them. They have to beat multiple of the teams in that group. I don't see them beating LNG and Gen G or beating Mad Lions and LNG. You know what I mean? Like I don't see them pulling off multiple upsets like that.
I think it's really hard to look at the caliber of, like, and I don't want to say this because, like, oh, look at the politics of how the game or how people watch it, but, like, genuinely, like, last year I had huge confidence that all of the North American teams, or virtually all of them, were better or equal to the European teams last year. Because Europe, their caliber of play and their playoffs were just, for lack of a better term, garbage. No matter how you want to swing at it, you can whatever. The thing, however, going into this Worlds, the caliber of play of European teams, the top two PCS teams, I'm not going to talk about the rest of that region, like all of the other legacy regions, they're all a step above almost every single one of the North American teams. And it's hard to like look at the play from North America, especially after I saw the Team Liquid versus TSM series, and I went, wow, this is the best series out of all of them in that playoffs. And that included TSM, which bombed really hard. Like they had control of how they were going to win that best of 5 against Cloud9 and lost. Cloud9 versus 100 Thieves, Cloud9 looked terrible. 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid didn't look bad, but 100 Thieves looked way better than usual. Better than any of their other best of 5s beforehand, and they had previously lost against Team Liquid. And Team Liquid played no different from one day to the other. That shows me that 100 Thieves is not consistent because they didn't necessarily like show slow progression of improvement, and Team Liquid showed no change at all.
It just
feels bad.
It's really hard because if you try to say that like the Team Liquid thing, it's like, okay, maybe they get like, okay, 1-5 is likely, but even saying they go 2-4 is saying that they're going to beat two of these teams or one of them twice, which is kind of hard to say, meaning that like them going 3-3 is like they pull it off 3 times. It's really hard to like to agree on that. Like same with like the 100 Thieves thing. It's like, okay, like I want to see a world where they get out, but like, are they? Is Closer really going to be able to beat like Faker and Carrier and stuff? Like, he's good.
That's what I'm saying. If Closer was in Group D.
Yeah, no, and I agree with Josh. If Closer was like, if 100 Thieves was in Group D, regardless of like if the assumption is right that Hom and Life or that LNG is the team that goes there, 100 Thieves is more likely to make it out of that group. The caveat here is that like it wouldn't have been Gen G, it would have been any of the other ones. It had to be any of the. It probably would have still been because they changed the way that they do group draws this year. There was no pool 2 to draw from where everything that wasn't a seed 1. They did a seed 1, a seed 2, and a seed 3, which usually never happens. So we didn't get this kind of mix up. We got a much more I want to say stratified set of groups instead of like one really stacked group versus one really weak group.
Yeah, and that's the problem though, because like 100 Thieves is like if they're gonna win, it's gonna be through their bot lane and like closer ganking bot lane and stuff. But
I
then
can totally see that
it's
happening.
versus EDG, which is probably the in my opinion, you might say PSG, but like in my opinion, the strongest bot lane in the tournament, probably. And
I don't disagree with you on that one, mostly because individual like an ADC versus a bot lane are two different things. But I would
yeah,
agree with
combined
you on that.
Viper and Mako, and then T1 support is Kyria, right? Bad with names.
Yes, it's
Kyria,
Kyria.
and whatever you want to say about them having struggles in the ADC position, Kyria is amazing. So it's like they got the two other teams in their group that have the bot lanes that are probably able to withstand the pressure coming out of that. So like their biggest win condition, their best chance of getting out of group isn't likely against the teams they have in their groups. Like if they got against, even if it's if 100 Thieves group was like a whatever, a Fnatic or a I'm trying to think of more teams. Be a good example.
My question then is, are we all in agreement though that 100 Thieves, if there is a North American team that makes it out of groups, is 100 Thieves the most likely one, regardless of like current standings?
I think so. I think 100 Thieves and Reapered is enough. I think they have good pieces all around. I feel like they're flexible enough to adapt to a changing meta, and this is a little bit out of game, but I also feel like the egos are a little bit less huge on that team as well. Whereas, like,
Okay.
I personally think that like Alfari has a bit of an ego, and I see a world where like things start to go bad and he doesn't want to take blame for it or whatever.
That's what I was going to mention though, is like we talked about like 100 Thieves' strength is like the bottom lane, and like that's a little bit hard in their group. Group D isn't necessarily the strongest top lane. So there is a world where Alfari can just be the best top laner in that group, and that buys them some wins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yes, 100 Thieves is the best chance we have, but I do like the looks of Alfari in this group.
Okay.
And I think if Team Liquid has a chance, that's where it's going to be.
Okay.
Especially if Core JJ can like, come from base to top lane and these kinds of things.
All right. I'm not gonna ask you guys who you think the top 8 is yet. It's way too early to
A little
say
bit
that
early.
because
We kind of discussed it.
we kind of have like an idea of what we expect to be the top 8 going out of things, even regardless of like play-in results.
Other than Group C, you guys haven't
Other than
mentioned your
Group
thoughts on
C.
Group.
Group C, I think, is the most up in the air. So like we have 6 out of the 8.
Okay. We'll leave it at that for now.
Might as well.
Okay.
My final question that I have here is, do we think the caliber of the games that are going to go in, given the way that groups have been drawn, given everything that's gone over, because this is a hype year, there's a lot of like cool storylines and a cool set of like skilled players across the board, and it's very close, relatively speaking. Do you think that the quality of the games in play-ins will match the quality of play of the games in groups?
No, I think the play is going to get better in groups, and play-ins will be a bit messy just due to the nature of the teams.
Okay.
I think Group B will be solid to watch. If not, maybe not necessarily the exact same quality, but will it be 80 whatever, 80, 90% of the quality? Quite possibly. And we are definitely going to have a good matchup in like the HLE versus LNG game, for example. So, but yeah, I don't think play-ins will be as consistently high quality.
Okay. I think that I'm in agreement. I don't think the quality will be the same, but I think that the meta will be developed faster this year, and I think that Group B will develop it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Because the Group A teams, it's like LNG and HLE. Like I said, they can probably try out stuff and like not reveal their entire hand during the play-ins. And the other teams, it's like, are they really gonna? They might have to try weird things in order to try to pull off a win, an upset kind of thing, right? So like,
yeah,
they're gonna play, Nocturne mid to try something, right? Like,
yeah,
it's to be expected from them. All the way from Chovy, all the way from Chovy.
Chovy starts creating nightmares. Press the nightmare key. Well, I think this is where we'll end it for today. I want to thank all of you who are watching. Let us know in the comments below who you are predicting to win. I think we'll be putting in the comments or in our description below our predictions of who we think in terms of scores. You guys let us know what you think are going to be the prediction for play-ins. We won't have groups because it's way too early for that. Even though we think we already know the results on that. And yeah, let us know what you think about the meta going forward. How do you think that the different picks are going to go through? What are your thinks about the teams? How do you think how good the quality of the games are going to be? Let us know down there in the comments below. And thank you again for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and we'll all see you in like 2-3 weeks after the first week of play-ins. Well, that. Ciao, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.